Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got one of my interviews with executives of junior mining companies, and we've got a very interesting story to talk about today with Masivo Silver. I've got David Coburn, CEO of the company, and Brian, one of the team members of the Geological team. And thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thank you very much. Glad to be
here. Thank you, Allan. Thank you for having us.
So why don't we start at, first of all, you guys have a historically producing property from many decades ago. First of all, when I started looking into the company, I was kind of shocked that these kind of projects are still available in Nevada. David, why don't you give us a little rundown on the history of what happened in the past and why is this project available?
Yeah, this project is available and became available to us through one of my current shareholders, who was a large investor of this property, and it has been in sort of his partner's family for many years, and they just recently, with the price of precious metals going up and things being very kind of happening in that area with lots of successful mining, brought it to me, and we looked at it over a year ago and talked to some very smart geological people. We talked to several well-known geologist and looked at the property and dug into the property, and then we talked to Mr. Brian Brewer, who's on our call right now, who was the geologist that staked the property and knew it very well. And so we got on a call with him. I did personally, and went through it. He's our independent QP, and we talked about what was there, what he thought was there, and compared that with several, and when I say several, half a dozen other geologists, independent geologists. We looked at it, and then in looking at the history of it, we found that pre-World War II, in the Boston mine area, there was some fabulous high-grade production that went on, and I'll throw it, not right now, but Brian will highlight in a little bit some of the production that went on there. So we dug into it a little bit more. Looked at the Boston mine, looked at an adjacent mine called the Montgomery Tunnel, where there were also high grade. And then we looked further down west of the property and looked at even higher grades down there that were historic numbers. I think that it's named the Western Skarn. And this is a gold copper skarn property. Through doing all of our research on it and being on the property again several times with several independent geologists, we moved forward and put together a very fabulous win-win option agreement for it with the current owners at that time, really wanting more shares than anything. They were that confident on what was there.
I always like to see, David, I always like to see those kind of deals that, they're not much in the way of cash payments, but when somebody wants your stock, it's often a good sign that they have confidence in the project that they are optioning to you.
Yeah, it was a great option agreement. I think that at signing it was $30,000 and 1 million shares, and then 35 the next year, and it really doesn't get heavy loaded till the back end 4 years down the road. So we've got a lot of time.
So is that the kind of deal each year you pay about 1 million shares and some cash?
We do. Yeah, we do. Now that's all been per the restructuring of our shares and the rollback. That's now 200,000 a year, but 30,000, 35,000, 40,000 in cash right till the final year is a bigger number all around. But we're quite happy with the progress that we've made in a short period of time on that property. So we have designated 10 holes to be drilled. They're 10 fairly shallow holes, just because we're quite confident close to surface that we've got some high mineralization where it was mined before. Everything was mined sort of closer to surface. So per the drilling strategy put together, we've got 10 holes. We've just completed the second recently here in the past week, and we'll be starting the third very shortly. But probably the X factor of this property right now and what we're doing is how the new drill program was designed and what we're doing differently than the previous.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that, and Brian, maybe you can give us some more details. Like, I saw some pretty spectacular numbers there of the historical mining around reported around World War II. And then we can let's talk about that part, and then we can talk also about your game plan of how you're drilling, because it's different than the
It,
past stuff.
it is different. And right now, our drilling program is we are really focusing on um, confirming the historical data. So we're focusing our drilling around what's known as the Boston mine, and there's some past production pre World War II that had multi-ounce gold, multi-ounce silver, and significant copper. Okay, so I mean that's pretty high grade mineralization. Um, so we want to go back through and prove to ourselves and to shareholders and everybody else that those numbers are real, that mineralization is real. We want to start there, then we want to expand out. There was some historic drilling on the property in the late 80s. I believe it was 1988, 89, and 90. Just a small number of drill holes. Um, the issue I have, and not every time you go to a property, you always learn more, and the more you learn, you modify your drill program accordingly. Okay,
Yep.
so um,
It's
the
the
his
old fresh eyes looking at it on the past work.
absolutely, absolutely, and that's what we're doing a little bit here. So the historic drilling that was done, they were looking at a different type of geologic model. And long story short, they drilled vertical holes. Okay. Which
Okay.
means for your investors, which means they drilled straight up and down. I mean, the drill holes were vertical.
So they
Well,
were thinking they were looking for something that was horizontal.
basically, yes,
Got it.
yes. And looking at the historic maps, the historic geology reports, and whatnot, the mineralized structures themselves are vertical or very near vertical. So if you
You could
have a
easily
vertical
drill,
structure
right?
and
You
you're
could,
drilling vertical, sometimes it's pretty hard to hit those.
yeah,
Okay. Whereas we've come in there and we've taken those vertical structures and we have projected them to where we think they should be. And we are drilling angled holes that are coming in, and we are intersecting those same structures, the same mineralization. So we're actually doing two different things. We are confirming that the historical mineralization is there, and at the same time, we are also testing the projected extension of that mineralization.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
And as David has said, um, we just completed our second hole. The first hole has been uh, sampled and sent off to the assay lab. We are waiting on assay results on that any day. Unfortunately, right now, all assay labs are pretty backlogged, um, but we are expecting results on that any day. I am expecting some pretty favorable results. I as a geologist, I hate to say what I think they're going to be. That being said, I do expect, um, multi-gram gold results over significant widths.
And that's well, you brought up a few topics there I want to ask you about. First of all, if you're drilling into a vertical body and you're doing that with vertical holes, it's very likely you're going to miss. You would have to be very lucky to drill down it, which wouldn't be representative in the
It,
first place, even if you got lucky.
exactly. So it works both ways. One, it's easy to miss. Okay. And two, if you do hit it, that hole, as you said, is not being representative. You may, if you have a narrow structure and you drill right down the middle of it, you got 100 feet, 100 feet of wonderful mineralization, which looks great on a press release, but in reality, that mineralization may be 30 feet thick. Okay. And, we call those promoter holes, which I don't believe in. I'm a geologist first and foremost. I'm not a promoter. I'm not um, somebody who artificially tries to, um, you know, promote a property. I'm a geologist. I want to know what's truly there. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
I spent a bunch of my career in diamonds, and really trying to understand what's representative is hugely important. And I
oh,
appreciate
absolutely.
that. And plus, I also appreciate your career because you worked with mine finders, and they did a hell of a job.
Oh, I thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was with mine finders in the early days when we found the Dolores project in Mexico, and that was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I know geologists that have been in this business for 30 years and have never seen a property that has literally gone from being on the property with a pup tent to multi-million ounces, you know, being in production, and being able to see a property or involved in a property is great.
Yeah.
And
We're treasure
that's what
hunters, and you found a treasure.
absolutely, and that's what
Brian,
every
another thing that you mentioned was the lab situation. Now, I know that the big delay in labs is in the sample preparation. And you guys used a lab in Idaho that I don't think is as busy as the ones in Vancouver or Toronto to do that sample preparation. And they can send the concentrate to Vancouver, and you jump that big lineup of samples being prepped, and you can get your results back very quickly, which, by the way, is a good sign to me that you guys are in a hurry to get your results back.
yeah, we did. And so everything we do will be through an ISO certified lab.
Yeah.
It has to be.
You use
Um,
ALS, right?
we are using ALS.
They're a household name in the exploration business.
Absolutely, they are. And I'm a firm believer that even if you're going out on the property and taking your very first sample, when it comes time to write in a 43101 report or looking at a resource, I want to be able to use every sample that I've ever taken on that property.
Got it.
And also, I want to have confidence in even the earliest sample that we take, that those samples are truly accurate and for what they are. So you're correct. We are using ALS, which is a household name in the industry worldwide. Um, but ALS, even though their analytical lab is in Reno Sparks area, Nevada, they do have satellite prep facilities, one being in Twin Falls, Idaho, which is 45 miles from the property. Logistically, it's easier for us, and also at the same time, um, Twin Falls, Idaho is not getting the sample volume that Reno, Nevada is.
Exactly.
So that's really helping us out. And I think we will continue to do that. And again, we're excited to receive those results as soon as we can.
Well, I'm an actions speak louder than words kind of guy, and the action that you guys are using a lab that can do the sample prep quickly tells me that you guys like what you see and you want to get those results back ASAP.
Well, we absolutely do for a lot of reasons. And for me, again, as the geologist, we have a 10-hole program designed right now. But I like to use, when we can, I like to use data from previous holes to modify the existing program if we need to. So although we have 2 holes that are done, the second hole will be going to the lab any day this week. Um, and we're ready to move on with the third, fourth, fifth hole and whatnot. But if we see something that with the previous results that indicate that, hey, we ought to modify this program one way or the other, tweak it a little bit. We always, like I said, the previous drillers drilled vertical holes. We're looking at it through fresh eyes, doing things a little bit differently. Um, but we have a little bit of a learning curve too. And, we are willing and able, being a small company, we're able to make those, I don't want to say on the fly decisions. I don't want a negative connotation there, but we're able to modify our program as needed, um, to make sure that we're doing everything as geologically and technically sound as possible.
And that by no means is a negative connotation to me, because I think that that's what separates majors from juniors and why juniors are traditionally more successful at exploration. A lot of
Yep.
times a major will say, we're drilling 1,500 meters. We're drilling 5 holes. We're drilling 300-meter holes. Here's where the holes are going to be. And that's the plan. They stick to it. If they don't get joy right away, they're off. They're off to another project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had mentioned some previous drilling on the property, and even in the vertical holes, they had some significant results. Um, specifically, one hole had 35 feet of um, 30 grams silver, 1.5 grams gold, and 0.96% copper. Another hole intersected 15 feet of 0.84% copper, 70 grams gold, or excuse me, 70 grams silver, and 9.15 grams gold.
Wow.
Those are those are significant results,
Absolutely.
significant gold values. Um, in the when they drilled previously, and again, looking back at something that happened 30 years ago, there's a lot of business decisions, and they're not always made off of geologic results. Companies have other priorities, other properties, people change and whatnot. But that being said, those are some significant results.
Very.
Um, but they went into it and they were looking for more of a huge bulk mineable, open pitable deposit.
Okay.
We're looking at it. This is a skarn type deposit. So we are focusing right now on proving that contact type mineralization. And also we are seeing and have seen some distal high grade structures that again that are vertical or near vertical. Um,
Can
you
I
know,
ask you a question, Brian? In that historical drilling, did they talk about the alteration that were they seeing alteration in the holes that could help you to vector in that, you're close to something?
a little bit. Now, the historic drilling was done with RC, so that's the reverse circulation. So that's a different type of drilling, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a cheaper way to drill. We are definitely doing core. And one of the reasons we're doing core is we will be able to see that alteration. We will be able to see that structure better. And being able to see this is a structurally controlled deposit as we know it right now.
Okay, I always like to
So,
break things down a little bit for the audience that aren't geos. So what Brian and I are talking about is the structures are your cracks in the earth that allow the fluids bearing with the metals to make their way up to surface. Now, when they get there, if you're close to them, they will chemically alter the country rock that's in close proximity. So oftentimes when you're drilling and you see that alteration, you know that you're getting close to something. The juices are flowing, as we say. So I
right.
just wanted to break it down for people a little bit there, Brian.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, those structures, faults, whatever you want to call them at the moment, um,
I like to
they
call
can,
them cracks.
or you want to call them cracks, that works for me. You can have them vertical. They can be at all sorts of different orientations. And when you're drilling a core, which is basically giving you a 2.5-inch diameter section of rock that is as long as your drill, or as long as you are drilling, you're able to see those contact angles. So we can drill and say, okay, we know that this crack or this structure is sitting at this angle. So if we drill it here, we should be able to say, okay, you know what? If we step back and we come down here and we put another hole 200 feet below it, or 100 feet below it, or 50 feet, whatever it is, we should be seeing it here as well.
Right.
Okay. Or this orientation, this crack, this structure is going along here, along strike. So this is what's called going down dip, and this is what's called strike. So maybe we can step off this way and drill that same thing. So you learn a lot more by drilling with core.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
get more geologic information that you can use to design uh,
Future
your
holes.
your your future holes, your geologic model, and everything else. Um, so the previous drilling, again, they drilled vertical. They were looking for they were looking for something that was, a huge open pitable mine. Whereas we're focusing on a smaller area right now to understand the geology, understand the structures, the mineralization, and then we will expand it out from there. And that will guide us. Do we need to drill over here? Do we need to drill over here? Do we drill at this angle? Do we drill at that angle?
Excellent.
Um, so that, and we do have a 3D model based off of the historic mining. I have not been underground there right now. The portals are closed. I hope that we can open that up this year and I can get in there and actually put my hands inside the mine and chip away on some rocks. That has been done again in the late 80s, early 90s, 88 and 90, I believe. So we've taken that information, we've taken the historic um, drilling that was done the historic mining that was done pre-World War II. We've taken the small amount of drilling that was done in the 88 and 90, and we've taken all that and we've put it into a computer generated 3D model. So we
Excellent.
have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but obviously
You need the truth machine
we're going
to,
to expand upon that and grow that model.
yeah,
Um, Part of that also is, and that's why, excuse me, not to kind of go back and forth here, but that is why when we drilled our first two holes, again, we're not, a lot of times you'll hear somebody talk about twinning a hole, which means they will set up right next to a historic drill hole and they will basically copy that hole.
right.
Okay. We're not doing that. We are taking that information and we are designing holes that are confirming that historic information that historic drilling, but we're also at the same time testing the extension of that mineralization.
And
So
your own model.
using our own model. So instead of drilling exactly the same spot, we are drilling down dip from that. So we're able to confirm that, but at the same time test the extension of it. So we're doing two things at once that make technical sense, if you
Got
will.
it. Got it.
Um,
Now, you also mentioned a couple times that these are skarns. Maybe you could break it down for our non-geologist viewers. And CRDs are often associated with skarns, right?
they can be,
Yeah.
yes. So the skarn, a skarn can be, I'm talking about structures and stuff like that. Don't take me wrong that a skarn deposit is always a small little deposit. Okay.
Right.
So there are several deposits in Nevada, or several deposits in the area that are very large. One of them is called the McCoy Cove. Okay.
Ah,
They got 6.1 million tons at 0.05 ounce per ton gold. And another one is the New World, up in Montana, which is 11 million tons at 0.23 ounce per ton. So these can be large mineral deposits. Okay. What a skarn is, and again, I'm going to oversimplify things a lot here, but a skarn is essentially, if you have, a lot of times it's a limestone body. So you have limestone rock, and then you have an intrusive rock that comes up next to it. Well, that intrusive rock is bringing fluids, is bringing heat, temperature, pressure, and what it is those fluids are coming up along the contact, and when they hit that limestone, they react with it, and that's where you're getting alteration of your sedimentary rocks based on the fluids and the heat and everything in the intrusion of this intrusive rock.
okay.
Okay. So that's what we're looking at. Again, that they can be very large. Um, so we're looking at that right now, that main contact between the sedimentary rocks and the intrusive rocks.
Got
Okay.
it.
If you look at a map of the mining districts in Nevada, this is known as the contact mining district. The
Okay.
contact is because there is a contact between two different types of rocks, okay, that are bringing that skarn type alteration, that skarn type mineralization. Okay. What we're also seeing in from, again, previous sampling, previous mining, is not only do we have that skarn type mineralization on the contact between the two different lithologies, two different types of rocks, and you can think of a contact. When I say a contact, this northern contact we're looking at is roughly 9 kilometers long.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm not talking, just a small little contact that's 100 meters long. We're talking a huge intrusive body coming up into a very large sedimentary package. Okay. But we've also seen with the historic results, distal away from that contact is where we're also seeing more of the structurally controlled mineralization that I think has been overlooked in the past.
Got it.
And so what you're seeing is, you like to call them cracks, is you have a rock body here, you have another big intrusive rock body coming up and intruding that, things are going to break. Things are moving, shifting, you have faulting going on, and excuse me, and that is generating more cracks. More cracks you have more fluids coming up into those. So when I say structurally controlled, my first year out of college, I met a geologist, and I didn't know anything. And he told me, he goes, Brian, he goes, if in order for you to have an ore deposit, you have to have three things. And I was like, all right, I'm getting some wisdom here, make sure I get this. And he goes, you need structure, structure, structure. And like, okay. Just like in the real
And a
estate
heat
world,
engine.
you need location, location, location.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. And when you're looking at structures, you have to understand when you're looking at structurally controlled mineralization, you have to understand the structures. And the benefit of drilling with core is giving us that knowledge, that insight on how to understand these structures, where they are, how to follow them, how to target them, how to go after them.
Now, you mentioned McCoy Cove, and I know a little bit about that project. And my understanding is that they are the resource that they have now of over 1 million ounces of gold, and at a grade of about 10 grams per ton, is in the sulfides. So is that how the heat engine that you're talking about that made it pump the fluids up into those cracks?
Right. And those sulfides are a result of those fluids. Okay. And the sulfide, and that's what we're seeing on at the Boston mine area.
Because you
Okay.
got the copper.
Well, we have copper, we have gold, we have silver. So and we don't know what else we have. We'll see when we get the results. We might have some other elements that might be of interest as well. Keep in mind, we are roughly, again, 9 miles away from a pretty active lithium play right now. Okay.
Okay.
So, again, I don't want to say we have lithium. I don't want to say we don't, but we are in that environment where we may have other elements as well. Okay. But
Right.
right now we're focusing on what we do know, which is gold, silver, copper.
Got it.
The sulfides are what brings the copper, the gold, the silver. Okay. And the sulfides that we have are predominantly bornite and chalcopyrite. And both of those, again, without going into geochemistry lessons, those are copper, copper iron
Copper
sulfides.
gold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Sulfides.
yeah, that's where we're getting the copper and the gold mineralization.
So it sounds like you've got an exciting story near surface with more excitement deeper.
Absolutely, and that's and I'm glad you brought that up. So a lot of times, if you look at a skarn deposit, you have these heat engines coming up. They get into a favorable um,
Rock package.
lithology.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they come up, the fluids come up, and they dump out when they get that limestone. Okay, or when they get this structure. Well, those heat engines, they have depth to them. Okay, I mean these rocks are not just happening right at the surface. They have a lot of depth to them. So a lot of times what you'll see is not only the surface mineralization or the near surface mineralization, but you also have what tend to be higher grade feeder zones at depth. So you have, I don't want to say low grade mineralization, but you have mineralization up on top near surface. But then at depth, you have the potential for a much higher grade mineralization, again, which is structurally controlled.
And it's not waving arms. Earlier, you talked about your optimism from what you're seeing in the core already, but a lot of this stuff is not arm waving because you've already got evidence from the historical mining and even the historical drilling that this all fits into the model that you're talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So, we're we're not just throwing darts. again, we are focusing on the our first two holes are focusing on the area of the historic mine, again, which hasn't really been touched other than a couple of small short drill holes in 1988, 1990. Again, this is pre-World War II. Is been in my understanding is it's been in one family for a long time. There's a small set of private property there. And that's kind of where we're focusing on, because that is where the known mineralization is. We want to use
But you're
that in
going under it to show that it
exactly,
continues. Because you
exactly.
can have this near surface mining, but if it stops there, then the story stops. You want to
It,
get underneath it.
exactly. And that's what we're doing. We are, and like I've said before, we're not just quote unquote twinning the hole that was already drilled. We are testing what they did by extrapolating that mineralization and looking at extensions of that mineralization. So even our first hole, we are testing underneath the historic drilling, the historic mining that was done.
Brian, I got
And,
to thank you because what I always try to do with my interviews and my reports is I'm trying to make investors aware of the treasure hunt and how you go about treasure hunting. And I've always found that those that can break it down to the key elements and make it understandable for a lot of people are usually the ones that know what they're doing. And you've definitely given us some fantastic insights into Masivo, what you're doing and why you're doing it.
well, I appreciate that. And, I'm a geologist, like I said, first and foremost. I've been doing this all over the world for, uh, 29, almost 30 years. And again, I'm not a promoter, I'm a geologist. I want to know what is there. Um, when we put a drill hole in the ground, obviously you have to be an optimist. I mean, you have to think and believe that there's you're going to hit mineralization, and I think we have, and we will continue to do that. Um, but the technical aspects of the property will definitely continue to drive our programs forward. We're doing things to prove the property, um, and prove that mineralization is there, and hopefully that there is a viable economic ore body there.
You guys are doing a hell of a job. David, did we lose you or are you in hiding there? In an
No,
undisclosed
no,
location?
no, I'm here. I don't know what happened to the visual. It just seems like
Gone
I've gone
into
off the
hiding.
radar. Yeah, no, I'm here. I've been listening to the whole conversation.
Well,
Great conversation. And
yeah, I
um,
really enjoyed it. And David, why don't we bring you back in? And what really impressed me also is you've put together a heck of a good team. And some of your team has had they were involved with mine finders. Why don't you talk about the team a little bit?
well, we've got Mark Bailey on our advisory team, and Mark and I live close by here in Arizona, and I spent a lot of time trying to pick Mark's brain with this property, and he's looked at the property and gave huge thumbs up to Brian Brewer, who obviously was on his team in Mexico for many years. So I'm really thinking strongly between Brian and Mark that we've got two key individuals, two key technical individuals who have had a lot of great success in this industry, and they're very bullish on our company and the property, and going forward with it, and the runway that we have here, and we're just given the success we've had so far on the first hole that we've drilled. I think our technical team is even more excited about the drill program put together, the success we're having, and rolling up their sleeves and getting a little more involved. I'll sit down with Mark here next week and probably get Brian on the call and continue to shoot the bull over the project.
Well, tell him I said hello, because I've been in this business since the 1990s. And I worked in the same building that Mindfinders was in. And I watched them through the entire evolution from a junior looking for something to somebody who found something, and then ultimately were taken over. And that's sort of the game plan of what I look for. I'm not one of these stock jockey type analysts. I'm trying to find companies that can find mines, and good guys to have looking for new mines are the ones who have found old mines, and they found something very special.
Yeah, we think we have something special here, and that's just not been, a group of guys sitting around talking about. These are people that have been on the ground, looked at the structure, and we think we've got a real special project here, and we're continuing to drill and continuing to push it forward. So we're quite excited with the team we have, and we're quite excited with our future here.
Well, and we started this by talking about how, it surprises me that these kind of projects are available for juniors out there these days in Nevada.
Yeah, crazy. And easy access to this property also. I mean, we're close to Jackpot. We're close to Twin Falls, as Brian says. We've got a great infrastructure around us. We have a great water source there that is very, very easy to get water for drilling. And Brian was instrumental in helping us with that. So we've got great support in the Jackpot, Twin Falls area. And I think we've just got great excitement coming in the near future and future.
Well, go ahead, Brian.
And I'm sorry, not to interrupt here, but that's something else that is worth noting. We are on BLM lands. We have a small chunk of private property, but also BLM. And when you're working in the United States, you have private property, you have lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and then you have lands managed by the U.S. Forest Service. We were able to get a drill program approved for these 10 holes in roughly 2 weeks. And again, that is because we are in, and I think it's very important to note that we are in a very favorable jurisdiction. We are in Nevada, which is a great jurisdiction to begin with, but also we are on BLM lands in Nevada. And again, that means that when we're done with this drilling program, if we want to expand that, if we want to drill 5 miles or several miles away from where our current drilling is, or if we want a half mile away, we will be able to expand that drilling program and get permits to drill that in a very short period of time. Again, probably within a couple weeks time. Whereas if we were on Forest Service, we'd be waiting 2 years for approval on to be able to drill. So
in
again,
many jurisdictions throughout the world, you're looking at long permitting processes. That's important stuff, Brian.
Again, no, I mean that I'm just talking for the drilling, the exploration right now. But that is huge. That is a very important factor that I think a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of people overlook when they're thinking about, where do we want to spend our money? Do we want to put our money on this program where, we're not going to be able to drill on it for 2 years, or do we want to go focus our efforts on this property where, we can get permitted to drill in a matter of a couple weeks? I think that is often overlooked, and I think it's critical.
Well, we've touched on a lot of the boxes you want to check off. Easy access, not long to get permits. You've got a geological story there that had historical mining of very high grades. You've put together a model. You're drilling into that model with core that gives you an understanding of the geology and enables you to then make plans for your future holes. You know, and it's in a company that doesn't have a lot of stock out. David, you and your team have done an excellent job getting to this point.
Yeah, thank you. We've really analyzed where we're at, where we want to be. And let me just say one other real quick point on all of that. We changed the name of the company to Masivo Silver about a year ago because we were very excited about projects that we just put under our control in Mexico, and we were ready to move forward in Mexico with we've got $100,000 drill credit in Mexico to some really exciting projects, which we can talk about at a future date. But what happened was just before we were ready to launch in Mexico, the Nevada property was put in front of us. We looked at everything that we're talking about today: ease of access, ease of permitting. Talked to Brian about the permitting. He assured us that we could get permitting very quickly. We decided at that point in time to make a monumental decision in the company's strategy for the success of our shareholders to pivot to Nevada. And we're there now. We've drilled our first hole. And I think this is going to be a great decision for us. And we'll move on and we'll talk about maybe Mexico.
Well, it sounds to me like you guys
some other time.
have a platform to launch off of by starting in Nevada and then
You're
get back
absolutely
into
correct.
Mexico, because you got guys there that know how to find things in Mexico. They already did it once.
We've got an unbelievable team in Mexico of some key people that we'll get on a call with maybe in the near future here. Maybe after their first assay results come out on Nevada, we'll talk a little bit about Mexico, maybe a lot about Mexico. I just didn't want to focus the attention away from the excitement in Nevada right now. So that's where we're trying to keep it.
Awesome. Well, did I forget to ask anything of Brian or David?
No, I think you covered it very nicely. And listen, we're open for calls if you ever want to get on a call again. And I pride myself in trying to return every investor inquiry. And Brian's a busy guy and not that accessible, but he's there whenever we ask him to be in the game. So, and he's been leading this charge since taking the property. So we're excited to have him, and we're excited to have some of the other key technical people, including Tom Quigley, who's on our board, who's real top-notch geo.
I'm really excited to have been able to talk with Brian, because not only did he give us some insights into this company and what you're doing, he looks at it like I do. I try to keep things as simple as possible. Brian is an excellent person for my audience to learn from. And thank you both for spending the time with us.
Great stuff,
appreciate
Allan.
that very much.
Thank you. I'm going to close it off and we can have a chat at the other end, guys.
Thank you very much,
and
have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian, for being on the call. Okay,
how
cheers.
I want to close this off, folks, is to say that Masivo Silver, I'm really impressed with what they're doing and what they've already talked about. Historical mining, very high grade, that they've got a new method of drilling that's different than the work that was done before. And then I also always like to look at it from the value proposition. The company only has a valuation of $7.12 million, which for this kind of a project, I could make the argument that I would probably pay that kind of money just to get involved in a project like this. Nevada, high grade, underexplored. But then you have to have catalysts to unlock that valuation. And they're doing those catalysts right now. They're drilling. They've got a hole in. They liked what they saw. They got it through a lab that can rush those assays to back. So they're going to have a lot of catalysts. And that's just on the Nevada stuff alone. We didn't even get into Mexico. And they've got a team there that have done fantastic things in Mexico in the past. So when it all comes down to it, I think we're going to have a lot of reasons to have interviews with the company in the future. And as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Important for you to speak with your financial advisors, do your homework, check things out. And on that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.